Hey, welcome to the College Football Insiders. Week 9 is in the books. I am Brandon Marcello, joined today by John Talty, Chris Hummer, and Shahan Jayaraja. We are live on YouTube this morning, which means no one's been fired yet after Week 9's games. We don't usually go live in the morning unless we know something's going to happen, but you never know. We didn't have a lot of upsets this past week. We had 6 ranked teams lose, but half of those were because they played in ranked on ranked matchups. We did have some interesting results, also just some crazy comebacks as well last week. But we want to start the show today, as we do most days, it seems like, on this podcast late in the season, discussing coaches that are on the hot seat, coaches that are trending down, coaches that are trending upward. And right now we're going to start with what's going on in Baton Rouge. LSU just absolutely demolished by Texas A&M in the Bayou on Saturday night. Some fire Kelly chants for Brian Kelly coming from the student section that I could see and hear last night. And really a situation where it was a tight game early, and then A&M just exploded down the stretch. And look at here, you can see it on the screen if you're watching us on YouTube. The second half comparisons. Texas A&M outscores LSU 35-7 in the second half. LSU with -8 rushing yards. Again, LSU just struggling offensively, but now defensively, they're giving up a lot of points. Gentlemen, first off, before we get into Brian Kelly's future, and we're also going to play a clip of him after the game. But before we do that, what do we make of just this result last night and what it means for the rest of the season for LSU with the schedule ahead?
I mean, ultimately, like, Texas A&M's just better. They're better at almost every position right now. They're better at every position group. They're better on offense, defense. They won on special teams even. And this was an LSU roster that I think talent-wise was competitive with almost anybody in the country. Obviously, they built up their secondary through the transfer portal. They put a lot of resource into fixing that. But the thing that's actually probably going to end up killing them is their offensive line. Of course, they lose 2 tackles to the NFL last year, and they just did not, I don't think, prioritize that enough. And you see these games where they can't run the ball. I mean, in the second half, it showed up on the screen. They had negative rushing yardage against Texas A&M. And of course, they can't keep Garrett Nussmeier upright as well. So I think that for Brian Kelly, his LSU tenure has been defined by, we have some great stuff, but there's just this one thing that we can't put away. Last year, of course, really the last 2 years, it's been the defense. Now they fix the defense. Well, all of a sudden, a leak has sprung on the offensive line and with the running game. Like, it just keeps happening year after year. And I mean, how long do you let this keep going on?
Yeah, I think when you analyze this LSU roster and you think about what's gone wrong this season, you have to go back to the transfer portal, which, I mean, sounds a little silly given that LSU had a celebrated number 1 overall transfer class. But not all transfer classes are created equal, and not all transfer classes work out the way people expect. And in LSU's case, like, talking to people that have played LSU this season, the secondary has worked out really well. Like, those pieces are great. Everything else, like, not good enough to, like, win a lot of games. Part of that is not getting an offensive tackle, which was a goal for LSU in the portal. It just didn't happen. Offensive tackles are very, very expensive. But particularly on defense, on the defensive line and the interior of the defense, offensively, some of the big name additions on the outside at receiver haven't worked out the way I think LSU was hoping. And you throw all that together with a very banged up offensive line and a run game that really hasn't gotten going for 2 years, and you get a formula for losses like this. I mean, LSU's probably still going to finish 8-4 given the schedule ahead of it, but that's not nearly good enough given the expectations and what was spent on that roster this season.
This was a fail or bust kind of year,
Yeah. After the game, Brian Kelly was asked about everything that's going on, and for that matter, what the future looks like for him.
It's impossible for the head coach that's been here, for 4 years and 35 years of doing this, to think anything else but this is my responsibility, and we've got to get it turned around. And that's not my decision in terms of whether I'm here or not, but that's what I will do as a head coach that's been doing it for over 3 decades. When things are not going well from a football standpoint, the head football coach has to be agile enough and able to make those changes and find out what we need to do to get our football team to play better.
Making changes. Might we see Brian Kelly make some changes with his staff in the coming days and even weeks? That's my question.
I think there's a lot of industry speculation that you could see a change in offensive coordinator. It's something we've brought up a couple times in the show the last couple of weeks. And I think Joe Sloan's job is definitely in a little bit of danger. I think there was a viral clip yesterday where I think it was a 3rd down call in the red zone. And I think with no timeouts left and LSU threw a pass into the flat that was incomplete. And if it had been complete, time might have run out and they might not have been able to kick a field goal at the end of the half. And you could see Brian Kelly on the headset going, "What are you doing, Joe? You can't throw that there." And
I think there's some bad words included in that too, right?
Yeah.
Often is.
Yeah, I was trying to keep it PG for the people at home.
I'm not saying you have to use the words. I'm just saying that was a very nice way of putting it. It was a little angrier from the clip, if I remember right.
Yes, absolutely. But
he wasn't speaking Cajun?
No translator needed for Brian Kelly in that instance.
Yeah, I will say, it was funny to see the clip. Obviously, we covered him for a while. Is Brian Kelly the first coach to ever go to LSU and lose weight? Like, that's crazy to me. I've never seen somebody go to the state of Louisiana and come out looking svelte.
He was pretty good. And I will say, I actually thought, that's a pretty good answer by Brian Kelly. I think I sometimes get on him for how he handles, press conferences. I think that's a pretty good message overall. But, you think about yesterday, it was his birthday. They get crushed at home against A&M. You have the fire Brian Kelly chants. You also have the governor of Louisiana coming at your neck on Twitter talking about how they shouldn't raise the ticket prices next year based on the showing against A&M. That's the governor of Louisiana coming after you. That's what's unique about that job is what we love about college football, especially in the SEC. But that was pretty wild. But so, Brian Kelly has to make moves. We talked about it, I think, a lot a week ago. At this point, I would say unlikely for anything to happen to him, but we've expected staff changes. I think that those have been accelerated after yesterday's result. We'll see what happens in the next coming days, coming hours, however you want to put it. But I think that's the next step. But is that enough to fix what ails LSU? I think that is the ultimate question. I would say it is not, but that is for ultimately Scott Woodward and others to decide at LSU.
Well, I will say this. I think I'm not telling any LSU fans to take any positive signs from that game yesterday because there was a lot of bad. One thing that I will say, though, there are some exciting freshmen on this team, right? They started a left tackle at freshman who had moments of struggling, but also had moments of looking really good. They started a running back who was a true freshman. He looked really good. He was probably one of their best offensive players yesterday. So, I do feel like they're doing a decent job of accumulating talent. I do feel like they're putting guys in good spots. But like you said, this was a roster that they tried to sort of paper over some holes with the transfer portal. And it worked in the secondary. It's kind of worked at receiver. It hasn't worked in the trenches so much. This was a team that preseason I picked to win the national title, right? Obviously, they have not lived up to those expectations. So I do think, though, that this is not so far gone that, that you have to necessarily move on from Kelly, especially with the money that he's owed. But big changes have to come. And I agree with you, John. That to me was a very accountable answer. And that's, I think, all, especially when you know that you're probably locked into a coach, that's what you want to hear.
It is worth noting. I'm not saying this in defense of LSU. This is a team that should be more competitive than it is, but this is their first real foray into NIL, into spending big money on a roster. And maybe it looks different next year with the second year of that, a second year of really strong high school recruiting results, because that is very good right now for them.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about that. Quarterback is a question they'll have to answer post Garrett Nussmeier. The Bryce Underwood situation kind of threw LSU's quarterback recruiting for a loop for a couple cycles. But it's not like I don't think this is broken, but Brian Kelly certainly has a lot of questions left to answer. And I think some of the fit questions in Baton Rouge are going to continue to trail him as boosters get more and more upset in the Brian Kelly era.
I will say real quick too, it's fun to look at the comments. I appreciate everybody commenting out there because obviously we're talking about Brian Kelly right now. There's a lot of coaches that people want fired that we haven't even scheduled to talk about. Brent Venables at Oklahoma, fire Dave Aranda. I think that's my buddy Akash Patel. Jonathan Smith needs to be fired. Like, man, we are starting to reach big time chaos season when it comes to this.
I'll tell you what, there are a lot of upset fan bases out there, including teams that won yesterday going, why did we have to win? Like, it's strange vibes out there across college football.
I think that this is also for so many programs, like this has been culmination years for so many of them because we're in this final year of, sort of the old NIL model where you got to throw a lot around and retain players and all this sort of stuff. So when you go out and buy a $4 million quarterback in John Mateer, when you retain everybody like Baylor did and you come out lackluster, like this stuff, I think starts to pile on when a literal investment is put into you and your roster. This is different than any era that we've really had before.
Yeah. So, wrap it up on Brian Kelly. He's on pace and he's been there 5 years. This would be his 4th year with 4 losses. Something that was very rare for him at Notre Dame previously. He's got a bye week coming up to rest up. Then they've got Bama. And Bama just continues to grind out close wins and then also just look very impressive at home. That's going to be difficult. And then you got Oklahoma to end the regular season where that could be like, that could be interesting. That could be the hot seat bowl for Brent Venables going against Brian Kelly with both fan bases. Like, we feel like we're maybe at the end of our rope with both of these guys.
I do want to emphasize with Oklahoma and LSU, like things could change, but I think that's a hot seat bowl to determine who leads every hot seat list going into 2026.
Yeah.
As opposed to a hot seat bowl for this year. But the heat is going to turn up on both of them.
So you're saying that's a hot seat primary?
A hot seat primary, exactly. Yes.
I think you need to trademark that. That is a great thing. If you don't use it, I'm stealing that for storylines that week because that's great.
You can have it. Go for it. All right. On the other sideline, Texas A&M looks damn impressive. Marcel Reed should probably be going up a little bit more on the Heisman charts despite some turnovers, but he just leads that offense. They're so explosive. They're 8-0 for the first time since 1992. I pose this question to you guys. Are they the best team in the SEC? Should we be having that discussion right now?
I feel like I've started making that argument on this show in the past, and I think we've been waiting to see them have a full performance, I think, like this. The thing that I was thinking about this morning was, and listen, I'm not encouraging schools to spend tens of millions of dollars, but that decision to get rid of Jimbo Fisher was obviously criticized at the time. It was an absurd amount of money, more than $76 million. You know what? It was worth it because this team needed someone like Mike Elko. There was talent, but it was undisciplined. There were culture problems around that program, which I'm curious whether those will pop up again as Jimbo Fisher does his media tour trying to get another job. But there were real issues behind the scenes at A&M the final days of the Jimbo Fisher era, and they needed someone like Elko to be an adult, to bring real responsibility and maturity and stability, and they're taking off, and they are a fun team to watch. Marcel Reed is great. Again, I'm a Jersey guy, so I have to love Mike Elko, but they're just like a hard-nosed team, and as we've talked about in the show, they did a really good job with who they got in the portal. I think it has been very additive to what they had coming back, and they're in a great spot right now. Maybe no one in the SEC fully blows you away, but you look top to bottom, a lot of teams are playoff contenders right now and feel like in that top 10 or so in the country.
Yeah. You mentioned, all right, first off, Mike Elko, maybe some of the biggest hands among head coaches out there, by the way, just gigantic, meaty hands. Coach hands, bear claws. But the transfer portal, right? I mean, Casey Concepcion was just an absolute standout previously at NC State. And you look at his numbers yesterday, he has a 79-yard punt return, which just flipped everything. Ends up finishing with 177 all-purpose yards, 2 touchdowns. And they can kill you any number of ways, right? Offensively, defensively. This just seems like, dare I say, this might be the most complete team. I know that, man. I know it's weird to say this. Maybe not the best team at the end, but maybe the most complete team in the SEC.
See, okay, I want to say 2 things. One, I mean, I get people's hesitance to put them as the top team in the SEC because, you know, there are teams like Alabama out there, right? There are teams like Georgia out there. I think this team is, though. Like, I know that they're obviously very complete, but look at their track record, right? We're 8 games into the season. They have showed up every single week. They went on the road to Death Valley and picked up a night game win. That was one of the worst that LSU has experienced in a very long time. But I want to go back just for a second to something that John alluded to, right? Whenever I went back and read some of the stuff I wrote and some of the coverage that I did whenever Mike Elko got this job. And I made a comparison that I feel like has worked pretty well, and that's to R.C. Slocum, the former Texas A&M head coach, most successful coach, basically of the modern era at Texas A&M. He was also, by the way, a promoted defensive coordinator. Obviously, Elko had to stop in between, but they brought in such a physical, tough culture back in the 80s and 90s that defined them, you know, the wrecking crew, all this sort of stuff. And you felt like they got the personnel to do that under Jimbo Fisher, but they never had the attitude. And I think that in Mike Elko, I think that he's kind of been that perfect fit. I mean, Chris and I have grown up in this state. Obviously, we know Texas A&M really well. Never quite felt right for the sort of rural ag school to be the swag copter school, right? To be the $75 million contract throwing money around type school, right? Like, I get it. Find whatever recruiting advantages you can, but it never felt right. This feels like what Texas A&M is supposed to feel like. They're supposed to be tough. They're supposed to be physical. They're supposed to get the job done, right? Like that feels like it's so much more the identity of this place, of this program. I think that Mike Elko has leaned into it in so many ways. And one other thing too, is I feel like I see a lot of people kind of pointing out me like, well, you know, yeah, they're great, but like their quarterback isn't an elite passer. So like, you know, do they really have that kind? But like, we got to get over that. We got to get over that. Because one, he's throwing his butt off right now. Like he is passing at a very high level. 2, yes, those receivers are incredible. So they're covering up a lot of stuff. And 3, I think that people are looking at this so much from like, will he be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft perspective? This is an incredible college quarterback. Like this is somebody who makes stuff happen, buys time with his legs, obviously had 2 rushing touchdowns yesterday, including a 41-yarder that basically broke the game wide open. Like this is a team that can beat you in any way: offense, defense, special teams, defensive line, secondary, linebackers, wide receivers, running back, like anywhere. And it's time that we start talking about them like that.
Yeah,
I've had Texas A&M number 1 in my SEC poll that we do at 24/7 Sports for 5 weeks now. So I think this is a justified conversation. I think they're the best team in the SEC until proven otherwise. But I do want to say, I remember sitting down with Marcel Reed in August this year, and him just like calmly and coolly mentioning Heisman as his goal. For a lot of people, you kind of hear that and you're like, all right, we'll see.
Cool, man.
And I maybe have a similar reaction with Marcel Reed coming off of last year. And here he is entering November, and I think he's on the very short list to win the Heisman Trophy. Like the passing numbers aren't going to blow you away, but like passing, as Shahan said, is not the whole element of the game for a quarterback. Like he makes things so difficult on a defense with his ability to generate pressure with his legs. And he's playing outstanding football. And this A&M team, barring an absolute disaster, is going to make the playoffs. A 10-2 SEC team is going to make the playoffs.
100%.
And as long as A&M doesn't lose the next 3 SEC games it has against South Carolina, Missouri with the 3rd-string quarterback, and Texas, probably the worst Texas team in 3 years, like they're going to go to the playoffs. And that's just like the realization of something Texas A&M has been chasing for such a long period of time. Like this is the best A&M team of this century, in my opinion, including that Johnny Manziel team in 2011. So hats off to Mike Elko and his staff.
Marcel Reed has the 4th best Heisman odds as of right now. on FanDuel at plus 500.
And by the way, I will throw out two things. One, I love that story that they told on the broadcast of Casey Concepcion basically being like, oh, this is like, you got like this running quarterback. Like, I don't know about all of that. They told him to come in and watch Marcel Reed throw during practice, and he was sold. And I think that again, I think people have underrated how much Marcel Reed has grown as a passer because they saw him just run a lot in 2024. The other thing that I want to say too is that, again, very crude measure. I'm not trying to, again, I'm not going to say there's a perfect historical comp, but College Football Reference has their SRS simple rating system, right? That compares teams over years. According to their metric, again, a very crude metric, this is the best Texas A&M team of all time. And I think that obviously, there are teams in the 30s that want to, obviously that's a little hard to compare, but this is very legitimately on the short list of the best Texas A&M teams of all time. And I said this yesterday on a TikTok I posted. For the first time ever, I will say it outright. This Texas A&M team is good enough to win a national championship.
We really, EA Sports in their game needs to be able to set up, games where you can play teams from the 1930s.
I need to play John David Crow. I need to
just get demolished 120-3. It's like, oh, come on, boys, let's go get them. Put your leather helmets on, chaps.
I need to see oh my gosh, I need to see Cumberland versus 2025 Texas A&M.
Oh my gosh. By the way, let's close the conversation with this. Brian Kelly's got 3 losses. They're not going to make the playoff. We know that. But his last 3 defensive coordinators at Notre Dame were Mike Elko, Clark Lee, and Marcus Freeman. All 3 of them are in the playoff hunt, and one could argue probably will be in the playoff, especially Mike Elko being undefeated now.
Well, Brandon, you're not mentioning the best part of this. Like, he lost to 2 of those people in back-to-back weeks.
Yes, in back-to-back weeks.
It's crazy.
Family. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. We're going to continue on here, as we always do on the College Football Insiders. We're going to talk about Steve Sarkisian and his weird, wacky Saturday in Starkville.
This is European soccer's biggest stage.
Written in the stars! What a difference she has made!
The question is, can you handle it?
Can you handle it?
A crowd here feels electric. Stream every match of the UEFA Women's Champions League on Paramount+.
We are back on the College Football Insiders. Guys, Steve Sarkisian had the worst day ever in Starkville. His day starts off with a report coming out of the Athletics saying that his agents, his representatives, what do you want to call them, had shown interest in pursuing NFL jobs. Then, within a couple of hours, I guess, if I recall, his agency at CAA, led by the one and only Mr. Jimmy Sexton, releases a statement saying that it was patently false, that those were absolutely made up, that that's not true. And then Texas goes on and plays Mississippi State, and they're down 31-14 in the fourth quarter. They're down 17 points, rally, get to overtime, and then win in overtime there in Starkville. And Barstool Sports' Brandon Walker was in the end zone where Texas caught the game-winning touchdown pass, and I'm sure his heart is still breaking at this very moment. I'm so sorry, Brandon, but that was funny. But
my former coworker, by the way.
Yes. Man, heartbreak for Mississippi State, but that's not what we're going to focus on right now, of course. What we're going to look at is just Steve Sarkisian's weird day. And after the game, Steve Sarkisian addressed the report out there and was not very happy.
Wondering about the NFL. Do you have interest in the NFL? Do you?
Yeah,
you want to
I'd love to touch on this, so bear with me for a second, because it really pisses me off that one person can make a report that in turn the entire media sports world runs with as factual, to the point of my agency and my agents have to put a statement out that they never have done. Historically, CAA, Jimmy Sexton, and Ed Manowitz have never do that. But I had to do that to protect my locker room and my team. And I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. I thought it was completely unprofessional of that person to put that report out. And the fact that everybody ran with it is borderline embarrassing for the media. And I respect what you guys do. I really do, and everybody else. But the fact that everybody ran that as truth is really embarrassing. Okay, so I've got a small circle when I make decisions on what I do and what I don't do, and nobody would speak on my behalf without me knowing. And so where that report came from, I'd love to talk to that person because it's absolutely ridiculous.
On the left, Joe.
Because if he wants to talk to the person, he can reach out to that person and talk to them, number one. So if he loves to, I suggest you do so. Lots of coaches do that. Also, I didn't recall the entire media sphere running with that story like it was true. Do you guys remember our outlet running with it?
Well, I did write a story about it, so I guess I can weigh in on this.
You did, but the thing is, it's like just because you see someone on TV discussing the report out there doesn't mean that every media outlet in America is running with it. And we talk about small circles. It's very obvious that, coaches they got small world views in a lot of ways. And if they see one thing, they just assume that everybody's talking about it, especially if it's on a big network or anything like that. But what do we make?
By the way, Brandon, real quick, can I give a quick story that I heard?
Oh God, are you going to share it?
Yeah, I don't mind that. I came from a source. I mean, sometimes sources are off, but this was just funny. So Texas was obviously in Starkville yesterday doing its pregame meetings and walkthroughs at the hotel, and the staff was having a meeting while those rumors were circulating. College Game Day was on in the background, like it is for a lot of schools, and pregame. And Pat McAfee, as Pat McAfee does, I assume sees this report, brings it up on national television. And he starts talking about linking Sark to the NFL on College Game Day with the TV on in the Texas meeting room. And Sark sees it pop up. He mutes the TV, changes the channel, and then pretends like nothing happened in the room. And it was just dead silence, and they just moved on. And that came from a source yesterday. So that stuff is always interesting when it's happening live in real time.
So he's the guy who holds the remote. He's holding the remote.
It sounded like it. Like, this is from one source. Well, I mean, again, not multiply verified, but it's not like this is like a Watergate level story. It was just an amusing anecdote that came out of that yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't hear in that answer.
I
didn't
am
hear
not
that.
interested.
I'm not. Yeah, exactly. He was directly asked, "Do you have interest in the NFL?" And he never actually answers that. And I think part of what this show is meant to do, in my mind, is take people behind the scenes, maybe behind the curtain on how these things kind of happen. And I understand. I think one, he is right. I've never seen Jimmy Sexton issue a statement the way he did. I mean, it is
plenty
historic.
of rumors.
But if you listen to what he said, right after he said that, he said, "I had to do that," which I had heard that kind of behind the scenes. But from my understanding, Sark was not happy about this being out there. And I think there was this is what I've heard. I was not part of the conversation, but a conversation to his representatives, like, you guys better clean this up, which is why I think you saw that statement, because it is a bad look from a recruiting standpoint, from a locker room standpoint, to look like you are actively trying to get another job. But I think what maybe it got blown up in part because it looks like it almost makes Sark look a little desperate that he's trying to get into the NFL. But what really happens in these kind of situations, at least I know it happens at the college level. I think from my understanding, it's similar at the NFL. When a job comes open, an AD, NFL owner, whatever, is going to have conversations with top agents like Jimmy Sexton. And you're going to say, "Hey, who do you have? Who might be interested?" And you might just say, "Hey, here's who I represent. I think they might be a fit for your job." And one of those names could have been Steve Sarkisian. It doesn't mean that he's beaten down the door to be in the NFL, but it could mean, if you were interested in Steve, I think he might be interested in you. Then that gets out there and it becomes what it became yesterday. So I don't think it's necessarily the wildest thing that Steve Sarkisian would be interested in the NFL. A lot of coaches would be interested in coaching the NFL. The question, which is what I wrote about yesterday too, is reciprocated. And what I heard yesterday cast doubt on that at this point currently.
I had an agent very well connected through hearing things with potential NFL jobs and everything, said that Steve Sarkisian's name has no interest among any of the potential jobs that'll come open here. That's not a thing right now, which made them say this is interesting that reportedly that his name was being pitched potentially to others. And like you said, most times, obviously, that's done by your reps, and they just mention you, and they see if that catches fire, if it blows in the wind a little bit and becomes a thing. And I don't know. I just don't know if Steve Sarkisian handled it yesterday the right way, because now you're just completely, I mean, you're swatting a gnat with a nuke in a lot of ways. You're making this such a much bigger thing than it really had to be.
I think in fairness for two things. One, Brandon, y'all both mentioned it. Like, there are half a dozen coaches that have NFL interest every year. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but their names get floated for these jobs because they're at the top of their profession, and that's what happens. And like, Steve Sarkisian's name has been mentioned in NFL circles the last couple of years. Like, I'm not saying he's actively looking for the job, but like, his name is going to come up. That's just the reality of being who he has been in college football. But secondly, like, the temperature in Austin the last couple of weeks has not been particularly positive for Steve Sarkisian. It's been very warm. Not for Steve Sarkisian's job, but just about how the fan base feels about this team that was preseason number one. And really, like, if not for a historic collapse from Mississippi State, should be 5-3, and really could have easily lost to Kentucky the week before. Like, there's a lot of pressure on Steve Sarkisian right now. And to have this dropped in the middle of all of that, the idea that in this year where Texas is failing to meet expectations to such a high degree, now he's actively looking for NFL jobs. I think that triggered something for Steve Sarkisian, because you have to address that. Because if you don't, like, a locker room that I think has already showed some signs of cracking. You had a contributor enter the transfer portal midseason in Jarrett Gibson. You have players calling out the media in some circumstances and kind of lashing out. I think you risked losing the season altogether if things went the wrong way, especially on the road against Mississippi State. And I think Steve Sarkisian doing that as aggressively as he did was in an effort to save the season and prevent things from going any more sideways than they already had.
Do you think what sparked the rally is he got the team on the sideline and pulled out that statement and read it to them? Went, this is, and they were like, "Yeah, coach."
Everybody chanted CAA at the end, like, CAA on 3.
I mean, here's the thing to Chris's point, and again, I feel horrible for Mississippi State. I mean, they had that game won, and that's especially for Jeff Lebby, who has not won an SEC game yet, and has now come close the last couple of weeks.
SEC game since October 21st, 2023.
Yeah, it's just brutal. I mean, you could just see the shots of the sad Mississippi State fans of the game. I mean, just a brutal loss. But you look at the rest of their schedule. I mean, Texas still has to play Vanderbilt. Feels like a loss right now. Still have to play Georgia. That feels like a loss. Like, we're going to be potentially entering into next year in a situation where, I don't know if hot seat is the right word, but there will be pressure on Steve Sarkisian at this current rate headed into next year. I think we've talked about in this show, there will be a push, I think, for there to be staff changes. It feels like that is necessary given what we're seeing right now. But he is making a lot of money. He's one of the top 5 highest paid coaches in college football. They put a tremendous amount of money in this roster. Now, as we've talked about in the show in the past, all that stuff is opaque. Who knows what the actual roster numbers are? But talking to numerous people would put Texas in the top 3 in terms of roster costs for this year. And they've been disappointing across the board in a number of ways. And at some point, that is on Sark. And I also think that you look at the last couple of years where they had one of the best teams in the country, the fact he could not punch through, I think you might look in a couple of years, maybe he missed the window a little bit. Now, I think he's still a very good coach. I think they're still going to recruit at a really high level. Absolutely. I believe in Sark's ability to turn it around more than Brian Kelly's ability at LSU right now. But I just think the way it's trending, it's going to get it's already a little bumpy. And I think it's going to get even bumpier as this season plays on. And I think it's why the timing of that report yesterday seemed to agitate Texas fans and boosters and so many other people, because it's like, come on, man, like, this season, this is when it comes out that you're doing this. Come on.
Do you think it aggravated Chris Del Conte? Do you think it aggravated the AD, especially with, they just renewed and did whatever his contract, and this is coming out? It's like, dude, we're not giving you a raise right now. We're not doing this. I mean, if this is trying to be a leverage play of some sort, which maybe, I mean, obviously maybe it's not, I'm not saying it is, but just putting it out there, it puts that question out there. And I'm sure that's exactly what the AD is thinking when he hears it. He's going, are we really doing this where we're going to you're going to cut, your agent's going to come to me at the end of the season and go, hey, we need to talk about a pay raise? I mean, what are we doing? I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting too cynical about all this crap.
Was that your Jimmy Sexton impression? That voice?
No, it was. Hey, don't do that. Jimmy Sexton's a powerful man.
No,
I'm sorry.
It's interesting too, because I do think that like this year in so many ways has been for Texas like an accumulation of little things, right? Like Arch Manning doesn't develop the way that people expect. The young receivers haven't come along the way that they expected. They took some in the portal. It's been kind of hit or miss. The running back room for the second year in a row, dealing with injuries. The offensive line, like they did not develop the way that everybody expected them to, even though a bunch of these guys had snaps and looked okay before. So it's like, it's just all these little things that have been allowed to regress in just these little ways, and all of a sudden you're looking at a situation where, again, a team that was picked number 1 preseason, and we can have an argument about whether they should have been, but they were, is the reality, is sitting here. And again, I mean, I think even look at the defensive side of the ball, right? You have Mississippi State goes up and down the field against them after they lose Michael Taft just a couple of weeks ago, right? I mean, there's been moments at the Florida game where you're playing teams that you should be able to handle, and you're just not staying focused in these moments. Now in consecutive weeks, you went to overtime against not just the worst teams in the SEC, but by far the worst teams in the SEC, in Mississippi State and Kentucky, who haven't won a whole lot of SEC games over the years. Like, this stuff is starting to snowball faster than I think that maybe we even ever thought was possible. And I mean, I think that because here's the funny thing, right? You make the comparison to Brian Kelly, and I think Sark's a better coach than Brian Kelly, no question. But like, I think that LSU has a lot of young.
Is that a no question?
Oh, I mean, it's fair. It's fair. I mean, but the
Brian
thing
Kelly's
I was going to say,
probably more, right?
no, I mean, Kelly has a I was saying them like in this existential moment, but it is a totally reasonable question. I mean, the thing is, right, when I look at LSU, I mentioned it, they have like 5 or 6 freshmen and true sophomores in the lineup who are doing fun, exciting things. And for Texas, like, we just haven't seen that with a lot of the guys, especially on offense, that we expected to step up. So, like, I mean, again, even again, obviously it's been injuries, but like CJ Baxter was the number 1 running back in the country. Jaden Blue last year, right? One of the top running backs in the country. Like, we haven't seen this level of development. And I think that while I don't expect, for reasons both him and NFL, for Steve Sarkisian to leave after this year, like, this is hey, you got to make some big time changes because again, like, staff continuity is great when it's working, but it's no longer working.
Hey, who's the OC at Texas?
Just fire that guy.
Oh gosh. Okay. It's a little early, but we're going to go ahead and take a break before we get into our next segment. We're going to talk actual hot seats, coaches that are facing some questions about their future in the immediate future, right after this here on the College Football Insiders.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
Welcome back to the College Football Insiders. I'm Brendan Marcello, John Talty, Chris Hummer, and Shahan Jayaraja are here live on a Sunday talking college football on YouTube and live via tape delay wherever you get your podcasts. Gentlemen, let's get into the actual hot seats out there. Gentlemen who are facing questions about their immediate future. We'll start with the fire burning on the plains. It's kind of gone down to just some very, very hot coals at this moment, but they can easily reignite if you throw something on there. Hugh Freeze picking up their first SEC win at Arkansas in comeback fashion. They were down 21-10 at halftime, come back and win 33-24 behind Alex McPherson kicking 6 field goals after having a heartbreaking loss against Missouri where he missed a kick, which doomed them. And now Auburn, maybe with some momentum going forward, but sitting there watching that game, I was there and I wrote a column from it. Some of the same issues that Auburn's had all year were there on display again. It's just that they were just so happened to be playing one of the worst teams in the SEC, if not the worst team in the SEC. They got into the red zone, couldn't score touchdowns. As I mentioned, they had to kick 6 field goals. The only offensive touchdown they scored was on their very first possession. They couldn't do anything there. Jackson Arnold, the OU transfer, finally benched after throwing a pick 6 late in the first half. And they bring in Ashton Daniels, the veteran transfer from Stanford, and obviously didn't throw the ball very much. They were able to run the ball very effectively against that Arkansas defense. We're able to get out of Fayetteville with the win. And Hugh Freeze, after the game, spoke a lot about his future and being on the hot seat and being in a reality where he knows in a lot of ways he's potentially coaching for his job. He decided, though, in his postgame to discuss how he's trying to block all that noise out from his players. He said that he even went into the locker room Tuesday after practice and asked the players, hey, can I see your phones? I want to see how much screen time you guys average every week and what apps you're using, because he knows that stuff's been infiltrating, as he said, their brains.
He was asking 20-year-olds for their phones. That's
he said he went in there. He said he went in there to have some fun. That's what he said. I went in there to have some fun. Let me see your phones, guys.
My guys are on Tinder a lot. Like, what apps are you gonna
Did any of them say back, "Hey, Coach Freeze, I think that of any person, you probably aren't the one who's allowed to monitor my phone usage"?
Oh boy. Oh man. Yeah. So he was asked to see their phones. Just fun times. Let me see your personal phone, guys. 6, 7.
Primary or no, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which of my burner phones you need? But anyway, so he was discussing that, and obviously it's a win. The players felt really good after it. Obviously they're still kids, and they get a win, so it's like, finally they get that off their shoulder. But I caught up with athletics director John Cohen at Auburn on the field after the game, because as you guys know, we spoke about it on the show previously with Hugh Freeze on the hot seat. He came out in an interview with AL.com a couple weeks ago comparing Hugh Freeze's uncertain future to starting a car, and you don't know if your car is going to start every morning. Well, I said, hey, in light of your comments about the car starting or not starting, and after this win, what are your feelings after this game? And he said, this is the way he decided to react. Quote, we've got to find a way to get better. We've had some struggles in the second half offensively. Our defense allowed us to have a successful second half. We got to keep progressing. Every single game we have played has been winnable. Every single game we've played, he repeated. Just need to keep getting better. That's not a vote of confidence. That's not the vote of confidence Hugh Freeze was asking for earlier in the week. And we were discussing this before the show, John. I'm sure John Cohen, and knowing him in the past, and you've known him, John, even going back to when he was the baseball coach at Mississippi State, he doesn't like to be kind of told to do something, and especially now that he's the boss, I'm sure he didn't like hearing Hugh Freeze going, please give me a vote of confidence at a press conference in front of the public.
John's a fiery guy. That does not. And we talked about it in the show. I thought it was kind of a brilliant move for Hugh, but also like the exact last thing as an AD that you want your coach to be saying, because it puts you into a corner. And I guess respect to John that he did not give into it. And I mean, that's Brandon, you were there, so you can really read into the tone and body language, doctor, if you want, on how John Cohen was. But to me, that quote does not scream, I'm loving what I'm seeing, and does not in any way really lower the temperature on Hugh Freeze.
No, it didn't. And we were walking off the field as we were talking, and it wasn't very much a like, oh, everything's great. And also, he was standing there outside, kind of half listening to Hugh Freeze's post-game interview with, I guess it was ESPN. And I thought he was kind of waiting to like see him, shake his hand or whatever. But it was like a very brief like thing. And then he came over to me and started talking. So
there was a clip that I saw on Twitter of like Freeze had like a big smile, like going up to Cohen, and Cohen just was kind of like, good win, coach. Like it was like, I think Freeze was looking for like a big embrace or something, and very much did not get it based on the clip that I saw.
Yeah.
I do think that it's a little funny that, obviously it wasn't perfect or great by any means, but that like Auburn fans have just been yelling, just play another quarterback, just do it, just cause. And immediately they put Ashton Daniels into the game, and he's more efficient. He still runs. They go on 5 scoring drives, all them field goals. Again, it didn't fix everything, but like the fact that like even just like message board fans might have a better read on how they should handle the quarterback situation than your quarterback guru. I mean, this is how many years in a row, how many quarterbacks in a row is it that Hugh is just picking the wrong guy over and over and over again? And we'll see whether Ashton Daniels ends up being any good. I mean, again, teams will game plan for him if they end up starting him next week. But this is the same thing. It's year 3, and we're still doing the same things as year 1.
He's been and I wrote in my column, he's been very slow to adjust to things. And as you mentioned, Shahan, that's why the message board warriors look like geniuses. And listen, I'm not saying they're dumb. They obviously know the pulse of their team and what, it's probably time to make a change here, coach. And Hugh Freeze has just always been kind of short-sighted with that stuff. And once he buys into a quarterback, Hugh Freeze is so confident in himself as a play caller and as a developer. He's like, oh no, I'm going to get this guy to be a great quarterback. That's my job. That's what I do. And he hasn't done that in years. And he certainly hasn't done it at Auburn. And he's gone all in on 2 transfer quarterbacks just in 3 years there. Peyton Thorne from Michigan State, who was a good and successful quarterback at Michigan State, obviously had some better pieces around him, especially at running back on the offensive line there in his final year at Michigan State, or his final 2 years at Michigan State, I should say. And then he goes to Jackson Arnold from OU, who, man, that didn't go very well at OU. And you could argue that it was because of a lot of pieces that were around him, the offensive line, all of the injuries they had last season at receiver especially. But he comes to Auburn and the same kind of issues are popping up, and the things that you think are correctable haven't been corrected by Hugh Freeze. It's very concerning. And again, a win's a win. But I didn't see anything change there that makes me think that things are going to be better here down the stretch. And to me, it just looked like more of the same, but they just so happened to get a win because it was against a very bad team.
As you want to say real quick with Auburn's quarterback situation, I think it's very interesting that Auburn did not go to Deuce Knight instead of Ashton Daniels. Like, this is a move we saw Billy Napier pull last year. You put in the ultra talented true freshman, try to generate a little hope, a little momentum. And not going to Deuce Knight in that situation, I don't know, raise my eyebrows a little bit.
It also shows, promise for the next season. Like, if he looks this good now, keep me around next year. You don't get that by putting Ashton Daniels out there. Also, what was interesting, I didn't put this in my story, but Hugh Freeze said the plan all week was to play Ashton Daniels at some point in this game. He said, we're going to put him in on the 3rd series, but we didn't. And then Jackson Arnold throws a pick 6. Now let's put him in. It's just this. I don't know, guys. It's weird.
We had a brilliant plan that we chose not to use. So instead, we benched our guy in a very public showing. Fantastic. Good job, you.
The vibes are just so freaking weird at Auburn right now.
I mean, again, I've said it. I've said it on previous shows. We're just sitting here waiting for him to be fired, man. This is over. Like, this is a joke.
To Roll Tide Dave and Mark Stoops, like Mark Stoops is somebody who consistently comes up in hot seat chatter. The problem is his contract is extremely penalizing for Kentucky to get out of. It's like
$38 million
within 30 days, right?
60 days.
60 days? Yeah. I mean, you got to find a lot of money in the couch cushions to pay that off. But yeah, it's going to be a conversation point for Kentucky down the stretch. For sure.
The Mark Stoops contract belongs in the Jimmy Sexton Hall of Fame. That is a brilliant contract that he got for his client.
Hold on a second. I'm getting a statement now from Jimmy Sexton.
I mean, it is, as you said, it makes it challenging to make a move. I think it's why, at least I'm curious if you guys heard the same. I think there has been speculation from people I've talked to, just industry sources, like, do you come to a kind of negotiated number where he's free to pursue other opportunities if he'd like? I think they wouldn't hate if he wanted to look around elsewhere. I don't know where those jobs are. 2 years ago, there would have been a lot of interest. If you remember, Texas A&M was very interested in Mark Stoops.
Oh, I remember.
Wow. More than Barry. That was going to be the hire until a bit of
that was an all-time.
What kind of parallel universe would we be in right now if that happened? If that balloon didn't go up in the air and got shot down by all the A&M fans and boost some of the
crazy.
I think,
and I've heard speculation.
Wait, no, we're getting into another discussion here. Mark Stoops would have been fine at A&M.
You give him that talent. Yeah, I really believe that. You give him the talent that's there. Yeah, he would have been fine.
I think that Kentucky is almost a uniquely miserable job right now in this era, especially, by the way, with having to split NIL and rev share. I don't know that Stoops would have been as good as Elko has been, but I agree. I think he actually matches kind of the tenor of that hire in a lot of ways. Like if you gave Mark Stoops Texas A&M resources, I'd be intrigued. Again, I think they made the right move by going to Mike Elko, but like Mark Stoops is a good coach. And if he wasn't in a total hole at Kentucky, I think he'd still be having success.
And whiffing on quarterbacks year after year after year.
I think maybe this is something we can go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to say, when you think about the two most onerous buyouts this cycle, when you think about fan bases that would like to see a change, Kentucky and Florida State, who's the agent in a commonplace there?
It's always
Jimmy Sexton.
Who's the agent for James Franklin? Jimmy Sexton. Who's the agent for Jimbo Fisher? Jimmy Sexton.
Billy Napier, like all of it.
Billy Napier, Jimmy, No, I was going to say, I think maybe this is like, we're running long here anyway, so it's probably tabled for another discussion. But I do think I think Shahan touched on something interesting there, was that for a while, like one of the like kind of popular takes was that Kentucky's actually the best job in college football. Yeah. And I do think that
5-year-old take at this point. Honestly.
Yeah, I think it's flipped. And I do think there's
in the old age before all this NIL stuff.
Right. Yeah. And I think it has flipped, because I think that what you've learned is everywhere in the SEC, there are pretty high expectations. Now there's different levels of title or bust. We want to win 8 games, whatever, but I don't think Kentucky's like, yeah, we're fine with 6 wins. Like, I think everybody wants to win a lot, and that's really flipped there. So
I think
maybe on a Tuesday pod, we can delve into that.
Yeah, I would say I think it would still be the best job in America if, like, most coaches want, like, we just put out the rankings of here's the budgets, NIL budgets for every school when we rank them, and it's like if Kentucky's way down there, but the expectations are adjusted as so. But that's not the world we live in.
Here's the thing, though, too, right? Like Stoops found himself in a very unique situation because he kept winning 7-8 games a year, and got to 10 a couple of times. Like a new coach coming in is not going to get that contract. Is not going to get the the sort of like, we're happy with you situation. That was specific to what Mark Stoops, like you almost have to compare it to, it's ironic, obviously the school that he's tied to Kirk Ferentz, right? Where it's like, okay, well, if you win 8, that's fine, but it's because you've done other stuff for us before. I think that one of the things that makes the Kentucky situation also very difficult in terms of whether they decide to move off of him is like, what are you doing it for, right? Like what's the plan if you do decide to fire him? You're going to pay close to $40 million in a short amount of time. I think that John Summerall has coached himself out of that job. Like, I think that he deserves a lot better at this point. So like, do you like go hire an option coach? Like, you're not going to invest most likely in this program at the level that you need to contend, or not even contend, compete in the SEC. I just don't know where exactly that leaves you. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't fire a coach who's obviously struggling, but like the relative value that you're getting back might not be that high.
If you make a change, go get Tyson Helton at Western Kentucky.
Maybe this is a good opportunity for us to like segue here, but I think one of the things that fans maybe don't appreciate enough of is how timing affects so much of these coaching hirings and firings. Like, I know Kentucky fans want John Summerall, and maybe if they made a move a year or two ago, that would have made sense. He has now played himself where he is going to get an upper echelon SEC or elsewhere job. Other people are like, hey, let's just go out and hire this guy. Well, if he's still coaching into the playoff, he's not going to leave a chance to win a national championship to take your job. And so we've seen it play out in the past. Luke Fickell is a very famous example of someone who was up for quite a few jobs when he had Cincinnati go into the playoff. I know that he wanted the Notre Dame job. I've heard that from multiple people involved in the situation, but he couldn't get it because he wasn't going to leave Cincinnati during the playoff. Then he goes to Wisconsin, and now he's in a kind of a weird spot. It's just like the Lane stuff is going to dominate the next few weeks, but they are going to be a college football playoff team bearing an absolute absurd collapse. And it is going to be very, very challenging to pull him out of that situation if he has a chance to win a national championship.
Yeah. Let's talk real quick about Luke Fickell. They lost. Wisconsin lost at Oregon 21-7. So not as bad as everybody was thinking it was going to be. Dante Moore, the quarterback for Oregon, of course, left the game in the third quarter with what appeared to be a broken nose. But still not as bad as what everybody was expecting. But Luke Fickell now 15-19. They're in his third season at Wisconsin. Still questions about his future. The athletics director, Chris McIntosh, last week at this time actually, released a statement, kind of playing both sides of things with the fans and the coaching staff and all that. But what do we think is going to here in the immediate future for Luke Fickell as they go into a bye week?
I mean, he got a tepid.
That's the response. There's not a whole lot not a whole lot of development after what happened. It wasn't as bad as it could have been. I'll give him that.
Well, I mean, he avoided disaster. Like, they scored for the first time in 3 weeks, so that is a positive for Wisconsin.
Hell
but,
yeah!
I mean, he got a very tepid vote of confidence, I suppose, from his athletic director last week. John and I were both hearing that there was some momentum for Luke Fickell to maybe get another year, invest in the program through NIL and through the transfer portal, and to move forward that way. There's still a lot of time between now and the end of the season. Wisconsin does have some winnable games after getting through what is an outrageously difficult stretch. Yeah. But I think it's just kind of TBD on Luke Fickell. There's still a lot of time between now and early December.
All right, let's go
one
hot
thing well, fine. You good. I only had one little note that I was going to add.
Go at it. Go.
No, I had it real fast. So I don't know if you guys saw it. There a clip kind of going on Twitter, but it's always interesting when, like, if you know a little bit about TV, they get time with coaches, offensive coordinators, whatever. They have conversations. They can weave in some of that information into the TV broadcast. And Tim Brando, who was doing that game, definitely defending Luke Fickell in a way that you could tell Luke Fickell was complaining and venting in that production meeting, because it's like talking about how podcasters don't know anything about the relationships that they have with high school coaches around Wisconsin. It was just like very clearly like something that was happening in that production meeting. So that to me tells like Fickell is definitely, he made some comment like Fickell is seeing everything that's out there. So there's a lot that's bad out there, which means poor Luke Fickell is probably reading a lot of negative things about him.
I was gonna say, so we've gone from the old play of those bloggers to now those podcasters. They don't know anything they're talking about.
Yeah, there are certain broadcasters too who do like to pick a fight every once in a while, and that may or may not be among them.
Okay, so we go from hot seats to hot candidates. Here's the thing. We got a lot of really great coaches out there that are going to be mentioned and have been mentioned for some of the jobs already open and maybe some of the jobs that will come open here down the stretch. But there's an issue, especially for one big coach, as Talty was leading into there. They might be playing in the college football playoff, and that makes it almost impossible to go leave for another job and puts a coach in a very, very tough situation. And that man is Lane Kiffin, coming off a victory at OU. Very impressive. The school's first road win against a team ranked that high since 2017. OU is a pretty good team. They might be tailing off a little bit here, but that's exactly the type of win that Ole Miss needed, especially after the way things went at Georgia. And now they are on the path to make the playoff. With the remaining schedule, 3 of their last 4 games are at home, right? Including one against the Citadel. And their last game, of course, being the Egg Bowl in Starkville against Mississippi State. But Ole Miss has some breathing room here. And with an easy schedule coming up, Lane Kiffin is going to be preparing this team most likely for the college football playoff, as his name potentially could be gaining steam for the Florida job. So, guys, I'll start with you, John. What kind of position does this put Lane Kiffin, and what kind of position does this put Florida in their coaching search?
Well, I mean, Lane Kiffin he's already making a lot of money. Man's about to get paid. And as we've talked about.
Hey, who's his agent? Who's his agent?
Exactly. His agent's Jimmy Sexton. So, I mean, Jimmy gets paid too. But, I mean, Lane is in the, just an absolute great position right now. They are in a really good position to make the college football playoff. As you mentioned, their schedule, I think, is very, 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 very manageable. We've seen them falter last year. I thought they were going to make the playoff. They were one of the best teams in the country. I think they might almost be worse this year, but they are in a great position to make the playoff. And if you just start looking at the calendar, the first round of the playoffs is December 19th, December 20th. That's 2 weeks after the early signing period for high school. Lane Kiffin's not the most high school recruiting in terms of head coach. He's known as the portal king. So the portal matters a little bit more, but it's an important period that you would like to have a head coach in place for if possible. And then the portal now opens January 2nd. There's only one window. We're going to see a lot of movement, so it's possible other teams will open up in terms of their players being in the portal. But if you were to wait until after he plays a game, or maybe he wins and then he's playing January 1st, it would just be very challenging for any school to wait that long. It would also put a lot of pressure on Lane if, for instance, we'll say Florida decides to stay open as Ole Miss continues to win it's going to signal to everyone, this is the guy you're trying to hire. And that puts a lot of pressure on Lane. And he might have to ask Jimmy to put out a statement about his candidacy. So it's just
they had the
really...
templates. They had the template ready to go, John.
It just makes things, I think, really challenging. And, I remember doing a lot of reporting on it a year ago, heard consistently, very unlikely any team would want to wait for it. But what you're seeing is there's so many premier jobs that have already opened up. And a lot of those top candidates are going to be either in the playoff or very close to making the playoff. And so it's just going to be really challenging for how these schools handle things. And if you're Lane, I've heard over and over again from people that are close to him, the thing that matters most is, can he win a national championship? And I think with Ole Miss, if they make the playoff the way we expect, if they can win a game or two, I mean, they might host the home game in Oxford. If they can win a game or two, I think it makes it even easier for Lane to say, you know what, like, I can win a national championship here at Ole Miss. Why do I have to leave? The money's going to be great no matter where I go.
Yeah, I did have somebody text me being like, man, there's something that's a little wild. Because, like, I don't think Lane's going to pass Kirby in salary probably, but he's probably going to be next maybe on that list. There is something a little crazy about the fact he's been a coach for 15 years and his only conference titles are in Conference USA, and he might be getting into that echelon. Now, of course, again, we'll see whether they get over the hump this year. They have a very reasonable chance to play for the SEC. And kind of the contrast to Lane, right, off of yesterday was Eli Drinkwitz, who they lose to Vanderbilt, and their timing, especially with the injury to Bo Pribula, might ironically be better for some of these jobs. He probably isn't going to be in the college football playoff after losing to Vanderbilt and losing one of his best players. I think back actually to the 2021 coaching carousel. And I remember that in the final week of the season, we have Bedlam, Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State. Well, if Oklahoma wins that game and plays for a Big 12 title and is in the college football playoff, like, maybe that move never happens, right? Like, that's a very real, like, possibility that I think that coaches and programs have to think about. Like, timing is such a huge part of this job carousel right now with the way the calendar sets up. And even just for a second to move over to the group of 5 candidates, right? I'm curious if it kind of stays the same, because we got 3 coaches that have done really good work this year. John Summerall, who I think maybe next coach at Auburn, but that's a whole other thing. Alex Golesh and Ryan Silverfield. I'm curious, like, for if any of those coaches make the playoff and probably again are a first round out, just with the way that things will set up. Is that as much of a concern as a Lane Kiffin, who maybe is trying to play all the way deep into January?
I think what helps the schools that might be looking at those candidates, as you mentioned, is that only one of those coaches can go. And also, let's not discount Navy. Hey, Navy's undefeated. 100%. Maybe they can make this run, make the playoff.
We gonna get we need a lot of a big preview of the upcoming Navy versus North Texas game, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun game. But I think as you mentioned, John Summerall, who was on a bye week this week and was tweeting his recruiting ventures into Georgia and appeared on a local podcast in Alabama during the bye week for like a 30 minute interview. It's interesting, but I think that he's a name that would certainly pop up at Auburn if that job were to come open. His wife went to school there.
He's from Huntsville as well, so like
he coached at Troy, of course, and knows the area.
Great job,
he's the type of personality that I think a lot of programs would like to have, because he's kind of a fiery guy, but also he manages his staff very well. And he's someone who's not afraid to kind of speak his mind as well at times. And I think more and more schools kind of want to get into that model. You've seen it with obviously Lane Kiffin, Kurt Signetti, guys who just aren't kind of afraid to just challenge you, even in a public sphere that kind of gathers attention and kind of excites
the Sabanization of the sport is hopefully coming to an end. We're finally starting to get some Hayton ass Spurrier back.
I don't know. I don't know if you love like Lane Kiffin calling out David Stone on national television.
That was a little ridiculous. Yeah, that was a little silly.
I'm all for personality generally.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a bit too much yesterday. I didn't like that.
Hummer, do you think any school would wait for a guy?
I think if it's the right guy, yeah.
We're
talking about timing, but like ultimately as an athletic director, your job performance is dictated by your football decisions. And if you have a conviction and a belief that the right guy is out there and you're willing to wait for them, like I don't, in my opinion, waiting 2 weeks to get the right guy makes all the sense in the world compared to rushing it to hire somebody you're not as high on. Just because
What if
you
the
have to wait
coach?
extra 2 weeks
What
to
if the
playoff.
coach keeps winning in the playoff?
If you have enough conviction on the back end that coach will consider you and that coach is going to take your job, you wait. If you don't, like, you move on. But if, let's say, Scott Strickland really feels like Lane Kiffin, even if he's in the quarterfinals, is going to take the Florida job, you wait and then you figure it out. Florida does a good enough job where if you don't get the first candidate you want, if you get a little further in the cycle, you're still going to get somebody good. Like, I have no doubt about that. But if I have a conviction of a guy that I want to hire and I think he is the right person to elevate my program, I'm willing to wait if I'm an athletic director.
Let's also not forget, like, if it's a Lane Kiffin type and you go to the playoff or whatever, and then you take a job, those players have a window to jump to, and they might just follow you to Florida.
No, 100%. And I think that the big thing too, I mean, remember, Kalen DeBoer was hired, like January 13th, right? Like after the national title game. So there's definitely not an ideal way, even frankly, to do this. But I think that does become a question, like Chris alludes to. Like, do you sell out on trying to hire the right guy because you're trying to salvage the 2025 portal class or recruiting class?
Well,
Like,
it's not just that. Like, it's easier than ever. Like, the portal doesn't open until January 2nd. Like, if you lose in the quarterfinals, you're available. The full portal cycle is ahead of you if you're a head coach. Like, there's more time than there's ever been. You have more margin for error in the searches than you ever have.
And the other thing too, and maybe this is just because I'm also in Baylor group chats right now, but it's like the other piece of this as well is that a lot of these players and recruits are also being recruited financially by the school, so it's like it's not necessarily also in the same sense of it was before, where you just have to come in cold. Like, a lot of these kids are going to, I think, stay in a different way because of the money. And so I think that, again, it just becomes sort of an existential question of, like, what are you trying to get ahead of at a certain point? And is it worth making the wrong hire in the long term to get some short-term wins?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to invest probably like $50 million. So I agree with everything that you're saying. I think like you mentioned Kalen DeBoer, and that was a unique situation where Saban waiting to retire when he did. But here's the question. Like, if Kalen DeBoer wins that national championship, was he movable? Probably not. And that's, I think, the risk that you would run if you wait on Lane. If he somehow wins a national championship, he's not leaving Ole Miss. Like, it's just not – you're not going to leave after winning a national championship.
Watching Ole Miss's defense this year, I'd be willing to wait. I don't think this team is winning a national championship.
I'm not saying they are either. I'm just saying that's the risk, though. Like –
yeah, but it's for any candidate, right? For any of these candidates. I will say too, right? I think that we have a counter example where an athletic department tried to make the quick, easy thing to speed things along and get guys in place. That was Deshaun Foster at UCLA. How much further behind is this athletic department because they tried to do the easy thing instead of the right thing? In contrast to that, you have in May of 2020 or 2021 when Kansas fires Les Miles for cause, and they're like, well, we're just going to go do a big search and try to find the right guy, and this first year's probably going to be a disaster. They come out with Lance Leipold, who's been one of the most transformative figures in the history of their program. So I think what Chris is saying makes a lot of sense. You just have to get it right and trust that in the long run, that's what pays off.
Yeah, but I will say this. We talk about Kalen DeBoer and Lance. Those were situations that were unique because the coaches left or got fired in windows where really no other job was open. So you had to think differently. But also with Alabama, it was just like, we're still going to have the top tier coaches still interested in coming here, even if you are following the greatest coach of all time, because it's Alabama and the roster was already set up in a situation for you to contend for a national championship. But anyway, I wanted to play a quick game here. This isn't on the rundown, so excuse me, and I'm putting everybody on the hot seat, so to speak. You will lose your job if you don't get this right. So all the names we were just mentioning, I'm going to add another one here. I'm just going to mention their name one by one, and I want every one of you one by one to predict where they are next year.
Oh boy,
as a head coach. All right,
Lane Kiffin. Turn off the TikTok cam.
Lane Kiffin, where's he at in 2026 as head coach?
Who wants to start?
I'll start us off. Ole Miss.
Oh, are we all answering the question?
We're all answering.
I mean, there's so much.
Yeah, that's the point of the game.
Ole Miss.
I'll say it. As of October 26th, Ole Miss.
I'm going to say Ole Miss too. Eli Drinkwitz.
Florida.
I'll say Missouri.
Missouri or Auburn.
Guys, this game's supposed to be a little more rapid fire.
Chris is so scared.
This is a scary ledge to have to stand on October 26th, where
It's
everything
just fun.
It's a game.
You're not writing an article going, sources tell me that,
All right, fine. Steve Sarkisian. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I think Eli Drinkwitz is Missouri.
Okay.
I think people underestimate how good of a situation Eli Drinkwitz has in Missouri.
Oh no, he's in a great situation. I just think that Florida is one of the few that might be comparable or better.
Yeah. Where do you
Brandon,
think
can I flip this game around on you?
Do it. Yeah.
Where is Rhett Lashley in 2026?
I know this one's interesting.
SMU.
I think SMU as well. But man, it's going to be there's some jobs coming open right now that are going to make it a little harder.
Yeah, Rhett Lashley's, by the way, their ACC regular season winning streak snapped at 20 games with a loss at Wake Forest with an incredible finish by Wake Forest, kicking that field goal. But
well, if we're going to continue making people uncomfortable with these questions, all right, let's do Matt Rule.
Oh man, I actually think Nebraska. I think he stays at Nebraska.
Penn State.
Penn State for me too.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning as well. I mean,
unless they absolutely melt down at Nebraska,
which is, I mean, they feel like they're on the edge every week.
On the table.
I mean, that's the one, and we talked about it on the show. Like, that's some guys are playing themselves. They're winning too much that they're playing themselves out of jobs, and some guys are going to lose too much down the stretch and play themselves out of jobs. And Matt Rule is, I put in the latter category. He needs to keep winning. But I think what we've said, I think Hummer said it like in the past, like, I think there are a shortage of good enough candidates for all the jobs that are going to be open. So like, I lean toward people staying to the home school, but like some of these guys are going to have to move. There's just not enough candidates otherwise.
What about Eric Morris at North Texas?
Oklahoma State.
I'm with you there, Oklahoma State. What about Alex Golish?
This one is tough. Like this one, because I mean, I don't think he's gonna get in at Florida because I don't think they're gonna hire another non-power coach. But like, there's not like an obvious place other than that.
Arkansas.
I was gonna guess Arkansas. Yeah,
I think that would be a great hire. I think that would be a really good decision if they hired him. I just expect them to do something weird.
If I was leading Arkansas search right now, I'd be trying to at least talk to Rhett Lashley, Eric Morris, Alex Golish.
Yeah, no, I think that's a smart way to think of it.
Ryan Silverfield.
I'm going to say Memphis, and I'm going to say it for two reasons. One, I think they are trending towards being the playoff team. And two, I think that he is a very good candidate, but is not, I would put him last in terms of like the group of five guys that we've talked about. So I think that both the combination of timing and opportunity means he'll stay at Memphis.
You don't think Florida State gets rid of Mike Norvell and hires another Memphis coach?
No.
All right, John Summerall, and we'll end it. My answer is Auburn.
Auburn.
I think so too. If Auburn does come open, I think John Summerall would be the perfect fit. Whoa, just like hitting that mic. Damn. That excited.
My fault. Yeah. No. It's just don't mess it up, John Cohen. Don't mess it up.
I think they would get along very well too, by the way, John Summerall and John Cohen.
I think what would be interesting, and this is just a pure hypothetical, but hypothetically, if Lane were to go to Florida and that job opens up, and Auburn opens up.
And
I think
John
both
Summerall
of them would be extremely interested in John Summerall, and that would be a really interesting decision for him, whether he thought Ole Miss or Auburn was a better position. I've already talked to some people about, like, what do you think John would do? And I think it'd just be really interesting if both those jobs were open at the same time, and I think both of them would have a lot of interest in John.
Former Ole Miss linebackers coach, John Summerall.
Exactly. He's got a lot of connections to both of those two jobs, as we've kind of talked about.
Yeah. Man, what a bad situation to be in. I have to choose between two SEC jobs that are capable of going to the playoff. But some great coaches out there, especially it's interesting because, as you mentioned, like Florida is going to shy away from wanting to go after a group of 6 coach. But there's a lot of really great group of 6 coaches out there this year that you could say they should be involved in certain job searches. And, but we'll see. I mean, heck, we don't even know. I mean, we haven't talked about Virginia Tech and like who would really make sense there. Is it still Shane Beamer? Who knows? This is going to be an interesting cycle. A lot of weird dominoes going to fall. But that's where we're kind of handicapping everything on October 26th. Come back when we say you got every single one of those predictions wrong.
And we didn't even ask James Franklin. Like that's like kind of like a big one hanging over everything too.
I had some Arkansas folks going like, hey, we should just get like, I don't know. I think they just I don't know.
James Franklin's going to replace me on this podcast next year.
Okay, that's what it is.
Dang, what kind of money are you making, Talty?
Well, we're getting James Franklin because he'll be cheaper.
Language, baby.
Exactly. We've got the offset language. They're going to pay him. And you can pay him a very reasonable amount.
Ooh, hey, feature that in the chat there from MB about James Franklin, Aaron. That's interesting. We like a little Bill Belichick talk. James Franklin, North Carolina, says MB. I don't know. Hey, UNC's played better the last 2 weeks. They should have beaten Cal. They should have beaten Virginia. Stretch the ball out. You upset Virginia. Yeah. Okay. Oh my goodness. I forgot we have another C block here. We have another block. That's why I was stretching there. I didn't realize we had another block. Whoops.
I think we could move to one more thing.
Yeah, let's just jump to,
all right.
We
can get into that stuff Tuesday and Thursday.
Yep.
Surprise contenders. Okay. D block. We're in the final block here. One more thing. Finally. Chris Hummer, what you got, man?
Well, another wave of true freshman quarterbacks has kind of come into college football the last 4 weeks. We were familiar with kind of the original 4 of the season, starters at Cal, Maryland, BYU, and Michigan, but Mason Heinsnell at Pitt. I'm sorry, I butchered that name. Just threw for 400 yards against NC State. Matt Zollers came in for Missouri.
Beautiful passes, man. Go watch that Pitt film this past week. That guy's got a heck of an arm.
Oh, he's awesome. And you can see why he replaced Eli Holstein when he did. Matt Zollers at Missouri came in for Bo Perulia after he suffered a pretty gruesome leg injury yesterday, performed really well despite the loss. And then I don't know how many of y'all stayed up to watch Colorado, Utah, but Bert Ficklen was out there playing really well for the Utes.
We'll get to that. Don't you worry.
He was fun.
Yeah. Some more true freshman quarterbacks popping up late in the year. And it's looking like a really bright quarterback class in 2025.
Yeah, I'm going to jump off of that because it ties into that Utah-Colorado game that you talked about. The first half stats of the Colorado-Utah game were absolutely insane. So Utah was up 43-0, which already sounds pretty bad, right? It doesn't even come close to explaining it. Colorado had negative 18 yards in the first half. Like across an entire half of football, Utah had 398. And obviously they're getting sacked a lot. That's hurting your yardage. I think that might actually be worse. They averaged 1.4 yards per pass attempt against Utah. Like I'm not going to sit here and act like I have enough historical context or remember every single thing. Like, has there ever been a worse half in the history of college football for 2 conference teams playing against each other? Because that, again, Colorado got outgained by 416 yards in the first half, and Utah only had 398 yards.
I don't know.
That is just insane.
Go back in the record books, look at some of these games in the 1920s. As we mentioned earlier, like the way back when they're playing teacher colleges and everything. There might be something there.
It was insane. Like I actually sat through and watched basically the whole thing because I just couldn't turn it off. I'm like, there is, and I was.
It was the only game on. It was the only game on.
It was the only game on, and I'm like, this is insane. And like you said, shout out to Bird Fickell coming in off the bench. He only connected on one of his first 7 passes, but then really turned it on in the second half of the game. He's a big time dual threat quarterback behind Devin Dampier. They're going to be in good shape whenever Dampier's done.
Great name. Sounds like a character from Anchorman. Great name.
I'll admit I didn't really have much planned for this, but I'll just go off the cuff here and give a shout out to Tommy Moffitt, legendary LSU strength and conditioning coach. He was there with Nick Saban, was a big part of those early Saban title teams. Brian Kelly gets to LSU, immediately fires Tommy Moffitt. He ends up at Texas A&M. And I think a lot of what Shahan was talking earlier about, like, physical, tough teams, like that is what Tommy has helped bring to Texas A&M. Marcel Reed talked about how he put Brian Kelly's face on some of their tackling dummies this week. You could tell it was very personal for Tommy Moffitt to win going back to Baton Rouge. You saw former players coming out and just basically loving on him. He's like, I remember the Scott Cochran days. He's like the new, like, most famous strength and conditioning coach I feel like that we're talking about. Wild that I think I'm even talking about him right now. But shout out to him. I think it meant a lot. And I think he has been a big part of what has made A&M so special this season.
Yeah, one more thing for me is Mississippi State. You're going to win a game in the SEC at some point. Heck, it might even be your next one against Arkansas. Talk about heartbreak in the last couple of their last few games. They are up 17 against Texas, lose that game in an incredible meltdown. Also, lose to Tennessee in a game that was very competitive, very entertaining in Starkville. They've lost 16 straight games in the SEC, which is the longest active in-conference losing streak in the FBS. It's the second longest in Mississippi State history. You have to go back to the 1960s for the last time they've lost that many games in a row. They've got some better pieces than they did last season, and I think that they're going to win one here down the stretch in the SEC. But man, that was, I couldn't imagine being a Mississippi State fan watching that game transpire, because I mean that place was rocking when they got up 31 to 14, and then just everything floated away.
I will say that they play at Arkansas next week, but then it's number 5 Georgia, number 15 Missouri, number 8 Ole Miss, and like the Egg Bowl is what it is. If they don't get next week, I don't know if they're winning one.
The most Mississippi thing to happen, though, would be for them to beat Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl and possibly knock Ole Miss out of the playoff hunt after we've all put them in. That is real Mississippi.
And furthermore, to beat them in that spot, to go back to the 2021 Bedlam game, knock them out of the playoff, and open the door for Lane Kiffin to take another job because the timing is right.
Well, no, Lane Kiffin rests his starters. The committee takes that into consideration. They're in the playoff. And you give his old friend Jeff Lebby a win in the SEC.
Yeah, and don't worry, he'll just keep putting Austin Simmons out in every single crucial passing situation for some reason.
Oh man. Okay. Well, what a week of college football. Not a lot of amazing upsets out there, but a lot of very entertaining games, some interesting stuff. And of course, we'll be following all the action here on this Sunday just to see if there's any, we usually could see coordinator changes coming out right now. And of course, things heating up across the land. Remember, Florida State was on a bye this week. Wisconsin's entering a bye coming up. And then going into this week, some interesting matchups we'll be breaking down. And of course, reporting all the news that's fit for broadcast. Hopefully not having to see any statements released by any agencies based off of reports in the future. That would be bad. But all right, that's it. For John Talty and Chris Summer and Shahan Jayaraja, I am Brandon Marcello. We'll be back Tuesday here on the College Football Insiders. We will see you down the road.